Hi, everyone. Apologies for the delay. We're just finishing up the redistricting working group that we had from 4 to 5. Sarah, I know that you have to go at 5:30. Is that correct? For charter change?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Joe, second. Not sure if we've got Sarah. I just heard her, but I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And motion was that, sorry, for the agenda or the minutes?
That was for the agenda.
Thanks. Can we approve the minutes? And Sarah, you might want to turn your camera off because I feel like you might be having connectivity issues. Great. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved. Second. I'll second those as well. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No, that passes unanimously. And then I see that we actually posted the agenda where the presentation and discussion is first, and then the public forum is second, which is fortuitous. Just because Sarah's going to have to jump off at 5:30 because I moved the meeting on her through no fault of her own, because Joe and I double booked for the redistricting committee. So hopefully we can do the presentation, Sarah, if you're ready, in a short amount of time. And then if Sarah Carpenter has to hop off during the public forum, I'll just be sure to send her the notes afterwards so she can review that. And I'll pass the floor to you, Sarah. And this is just, I guess, by way of background, what we discussed at the last CDNR meeting, which is as we were starting to talk about camping, we realized we just needed a little bit more background or an update on the current house list situation in Burlington and maybe a little bit beyond, as things have changed and continue to shift, especially since COVID.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So what is posted on the website along with this agenda is the report that I prepared following the last CDNR committee meeting, which addressed both some camping and how we're working to respond to that, in addition to some current data around folks who are actively without housing right now. And I also provided some updates around the coordinated entry system locally here in Chittenden County. As you know, the city made an investment in coordinated entry by expanding staffing capacity for that. So the report talked a little bit about how that investment has yielded many additional households to be entered into coordinated entry, and how we have expanded an outreach capacity for that work as well. Additionally, with the report, I talked about our unsheltered number and how that has increased. We've seen a pretty drastic increase in the our unsheltered population numbers that we haven't seen this high, and since 2016, 2015, and then also talked about how staff are sort of coping with this, in addition to the trauma for folks to have their camps moved. Staff also certainly shoulders some stress related to moving these camps as well, to responding in that way. Also talked about the Chittenden County Homeless Alliance, some of our work there. I also serve as the co-chair of the Chittenden County Homeless Alliance and the co-chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. We just submitted our collaborative application to apply for around $1.1 million in COC funding to support permanent supportive housing projects and some rehousing projects for people who are fleeing domestic violence as well. Trying to think what else is in here. Also gave a little update on the Elmwood Community Emergency Shelter. We're working currently on developing policies and procedures. We had a great meeting last week with representatives from the outreach teams across Chittenden County, hoping to have them weigh in on screening and actually form a kind of a screening committee or board to start off with as we work to identify people who would benefit from moving to be a guest at the shelter. Finally, I talked a little bit about housing development. On the last page, you'll see where we have mapped out the housing development over the next 3 years, how many units are being developed, towns within Chittenden County they're being developed in, the developer who is leading that work, and then how many households will be homeless dedicated units. We have a by-year breakdown as well as totals after 2025. So that's sort of a quick overview of that report. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that anyone had, but that's about it.
Great. And then, Sarah, let me just check on the understanding of next steps before I talk about this. I think what we have decided is that we want to share this with the rest of the council. Do you want to do that as another presentation, or do you just want to share the report with them?
I would defer to you. If there are specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. Certainly before the next city council meeting, there may be additional updates. Things are happening really rapidly, thankfully, with regard to the Elmwood shelter. So there could be potentially other updates around that. But I guess I would defer to you all about how you'd like to proceed.
Great. And I can talk to Karen to see what fits onto the agenda. I'm not quite sure how much is coming our way and how full the next couple of days are. But I think if you're available, obviously, I think it'd be great if you were there to answer questions, as I assume counselors will have them. And then Joe and Sarah, any questions or things that you think would be useful to include the report before we share it with the council, or anything else?
If I could, Sarah, could you speak a little bit more about any interactions you've had with the state around VRAP, and if they're considering expanding the general assistance program like they have in years past to assist folks who are unsheltered right now?
There's not a whole lot more that I can speak to, mainly because while the state has announced that they have identified an additional $20 million in funding, I know that is not coming from ARPA, that is coming from FEMA. But we are still looking for answers as a community as to how exactly that funding will impact the program. I haven't asked some representative from from the state to join the Chittenden County Homeless Alliance meeting on Thursday this week, and we're hoping to understand how that $20 million investment will be made and which populations it will support. I do know that things that are not changing are that as of October 1st, the state is no longer accepting new applications to the transitional housing program, and the state is no longer accepting new applications to the VRAP program either. So that is as of October 1st. No one new will be added to either of those programs. They had wanted to implement sort of a sundowning of the program where they reduced benefits for folks in the 30 to 80% AMI range. I haven't heard that is not happening. I'm wondering if that's going to be stretched out further. So we don't have additional details about that. I do know that people who have been receiving HUD rental assistance and VRAP will no longer continue to receive the VRAP funding. So those are the things that we know for sure, but we need to learn more about it. One of the questions that I've posed to the state is, how many people are in this population of 30 to 80%? And as we look at the number of people who are enrolled in the program in the state or who have accessed the program over the last couple of years, it's about over 12,000 people, which is close to 20% of our population statewide. So I think that what we're hoping from the state is really clearly to understand how this affects Chittenden County, how many people in that 30 to 80% AMI are being impacted by this change. And what can caseworkers do to support those households in terms of investments?
Thank you. And I should have led with this. Thank you for putting this report together. It's very comprehensive and provides an excellent overview. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
It really points out.
Sarah, you might want to turn your camera off again. I don't know that we can hear you and see you.
Do in terms of presenting this.
And we still didn't hear that. So I don't know if you want to call in or throw your question to the chat, because we can't hear you, Sarah. And I'm just sending her that just in case she can't hear us. But if Joe doesn't have anything else, I also want to make sure this is also open for public forum. So with the presentation, if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to give, I'm happy to open the public forum at this time, knowing that Sarah might jump in as well.
Can you not hear me?
We heard that, Sarah, but that's kind of the first we've heard of you again, and you're very broken up.
No. All right.
I assume she's going to pursue an alternative method. Any members of the public have questions or comments? Turning to public forum. Great. Then I just want to add my thanks to what Joe said while we wait for Sarah to hopefully add another way. I haven't actually got a chance to fully read the report yet, but I look forward to doing that, and then looping back with Karen to see when would be best to bring this up. And I think also, I don't know to what extent our representatives at the state level are aware of this, but also if that feels fine to you, sharing it with them so that we can continue to highlight this issue and the help that we need.
I will say that with regard to VRAP, one of the things that I don't think is mentioned in the report that I submitted to you all, but that the Burlington Housing Authority has been awarded some housing stability vouchers. I can't remember if that is in the report or not, but they will be working to lease people in place whose VRAP may be ending and who will be income eligible for Section 8 voucher. I know that the Vermont State Housing Authority has also applied for housing stability vouchers and has the CCHA has signed a letter of support for their application, but it's unknown yet if they will be awarded those. So I don't know if that made it into the report or not. I can't remember now, but wanted to share that as well.
Thanks, Sarah.
Soraya,
Yes, Gail.
can I jump in? So I'm not seeing the raise hand function here, so sorry about that. But I do have a couple questions. One, if there's any, and maybe it's in this report, but since we aren't looking at that, updates on the pod community, and also whether, and this might be something more appropriate for Lacey, but how folks feel about what it has looked like in terms of moving people along when they are tenting in places they're not allowed to tent.
And Gail, before Sarah jumps in, just so you know, when you say we're not looked, so the report is on the CDNR website. So we are looking at it, and you can take a look at it from the CDNR website, the CDNR committee meeting website,
Great.
which I can post a link to.
Great.
And go ahead, Sarah.
Sure, thanks, Gail. I'm happy to answer your question around Elmwood first. So the Elmwood Community Shelter was being paved today. So we are repaving over that parking lot. There has been electrical installed there. There was also a old fuel tank that was removed from the site unexpectedly, but it should be paved today. The shelter units are coming, I believe, within the next week. So they will be on site, and staff from Pallet Company will be there to work on constructing, putting together the shelter units. The bathroom and community room will come at a little bit later date once the individual shelter units are constructed. We are in the final stages of signing contract with Champlain Housing Trust for the operation of Elmwood. We have agreements in place for services to be brought on site, including recovery services, case management services, medical and mental health, mobile outreach services. Will also be on site, as well as outreach teams who will be providing meals to the site. They'll be providing hot meals Monday through Friday with meals that can be reheated or sandwiches for over the weekend as well. I think that's it for the update on Elmwood. We are working furiously over the next few weeks to make sure that we have everything in place. Still to be put in place our contracts for linens, contracts for cleaning on site, and some snow removal, trash removal, compost removal, those kinds of things. So we're in the home stretch, I hope. So that's the update on Elmwood. Unless you had any other questions on that, I was hoping maybe you could reframe the other part of your question around camp response. I'm not sure that I actually understood what you were asking.
Sure. Thank you for that update on the Elmwood project. Just wondering, given the increased staffing of the community support officers and Lacey having more people to work with this summer, how you or she, I know you coordinate with her, I believe, feel, how has that gone in terms of tenting in parks and the process of moving folks along? How has that gone from the perspective of the city?
Well, I think you'd have to ask Lacey specifically. I know that Lacey's team, the CSLs, are not the ones who notice or enforce the camping ordinance within the city. So Parks and Rec is enforcing that in addition to the be enforcing that as well. So I think you'd have to speak directly to Lacey on that, but I can say that, you know, one of the challenges that we run up against that I hear, I meet with teams who are responding to camps all the time. I do some outreach myself. I was just at Callahan last week to chat with people as well as down to the waterfront to hear, you know, kind of their perspective. I think one of the challenges is that there are, you know, probably close to a little over 70 individuals who are camping within the city right now, and there is nowhere for them to go. The shelters are completely at capacity. And so one of the things that feels just hard in general, both from a staff perspective and from a camper perspective, is that telling someone that they can't be here, but we don't have an answer for where they can be, doesn't feel good to share, and it doesn't feel good to receive. So I think that is that's definitely been a bit of a challenge. I know that the urban park ranger, I was speaking to him when we were down touring the waterfront a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned one particular tent and said he had that's about the third time or fourth time that tent had been, that he had to move that tent along from one place to another, that he'd spent a lot of hours, you know, talking with folks, you know, trying to get them, you know, get their needs met and asking them to move, only to resurface in a place that they still weren't allowed to be. So I think that's one of the challenges that, you know, we're spending a lot of time and resources, both financial and emotional resources, to respond to camps in a way that's equitable, in a way that's consistent, in a way that's fair, and, you know, all the while trying to minimize, you know, the trauma and secondary trauma involved in that as well. So I don't know if that's really the answer you were, you know, looking for or hoping for. Again, I can't speak for Lacey, but I can share my experience with that.
Yeah, thanks,
This
Sarah.
is Sarah Carpenter. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Sarah. And just so you know, while you were gone, we had a question from Gail on an update to the Elmwood camping or pods, as well as just generally. I think you heard Sarah's answer to the last question. So go ahead.
So one of the things I'd like to have you tell us, Sarah Russell, is so what do we do? I mean, you've told us what the city's done to date, but in terms of the report and the report to the city council, I really want to also know what can be done. I mean, for instance, you just told us they're not admitting anybody more to transitional housing. Would that help? You know, would easing of the GA program help? I mean, I feel like the city and city staff, who I think are really trying to do the right thing, an admirable job, aren't being given the tools, and the tools are going to be beyond the city of Burlington to hand out, so to speak. So I'd like us, particularly when we report back to the public and the council, to talk about that. I mean, if we have 70 unsheltered persons just in our city camping, what is the answer? I mean, the obvious is more housing, but in the interim, what are some other answers? Because I feel, you know, we're I don't know, being blamed for something that's really a regional and state problem, and it's incredibly frustrating to me. I mean, there's not 70 people camping in South Burlington or camping in Essex or camping in Jericho. There are in Burlington. So I don't know, Sarah Russell, if you have some immediate thoughts of what if you could do it, what would an interim strategy be?
That's a really good question. I think when we think about camping, we have a current ordinance in place, and until that ordinance changes, we're required to follow the ordinance. So I think that we're doing the best that we can around camping that is possible given the current policy. So that's what I would say around camping. I mean, I think of course we need more transitional housing. The state does have, we'll still have the, I call it the cold weather exemption, but I think it's I can't remember what the AWE, blanking on what the A is right now, but it's when it's super cold. So it used to be CWE. So they have, they will still implement the cold weather exception when adverse weather, that's what it is, this winter when it's cold. So that will happen. However, we don't have capacity in Chittenden County. We don't have motel capacity. So I'm not exactly sure where those folks are going to go, if they're going to be forced to, you know, move out of county. Last I heard, there was around 75 to 80 households that from Chittenden County that have been placed in out of county motels because we didn't have the capacity. I think that there's more folks camping in Burlington and unsheltered in Burlington for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that there are no motels in Burlington. So if people have services or support networks that they access in Burlington, they don't have a motel option within the city. Most of the time, those motel options are in South Burlington or Colchester or Williston or Shelburne. So there are not motels within Burlington. So of course we need more transitional housing, but I think that transitional housing is only as good as having something to transition into. So when I hear that you're saying that we need, you know, new housing, I'm also looking at, you know, the data from the report that I provided to you all with the number of new units that we were hoping to come online, especially within Burlington. By the end of this year, I have 2 here. That doesn't include the 5 that are that we're hoping to see through the Vermont Housing Improvement Program. So that could be up to 7, 16 next year, 8 the following, and 15 in 2025. So over the next 3 years, we're hoping to see, you know, 41 new units in Burlington alone, but we have, you know, a population of many, many, many more than that. So I think that along with those new homeless dedicated units, you know, we're going to need more, I think.
I definitely think that. You know, and that's kind of the point I think we need to be stressing is we obviously need long-term, but we need some clearer, quicker, short-term solutions. And, you know, for instance, the rationale for the state stopping the transitional program, what was that rationale?
There was no funding, so they were utilizing ARPA funding, and they anticipated that would go for, I believe the transitional housing program originally was supposed to be 18 months, but because of the way that they needed to spend that money, or they didn't spend enough of that money up front, then they would not receive other funding after they had to more rapidly spend those funds. So I believe now the length of the transitional housing program was reduced to 9 months. So the program will end in March, and I'm hoping that they come up with some other plan. I'm not sure if that's where, you know, that 20 million comes in. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm not sure what's going to happen, I guess, in March.
Well, it would be helpful, you know, not tonight, but if we, the city council, want to more strongly advocate with legislators, you know, if we could get some specific asks like X dollars for transitional housing. I mean, you know, there is the obvious, but I think we need to say now, legislature, and to those running for office, what are we going to do in the next 6 to 12 months? You know, the new long-term housing is just slow. And, you know, what are you going to do in the meantime? And so it'd be helpful to kind of narrow that down. Is there still a waiting list to get into coordinated entry, or is that?
There's no waiting list to get in. There's no waiting list to get into coordinated entry, so anyone can have access. They would fill out an assessment with a provider, so their name would be on the master list. In some cases, there is a wait for someone to be connected with a housing navigator or housing advocate or case manager or whatever the agency is, you know, however they identify their staff. So in some cases, there is a wait for people to be connected with a case manager.
Is that?
I think if we're going to, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, I just say, is that data you can get to us in a sense of you know, I'm a little bit low. We need 5 more housing navigators or something targeted to the greater Burlington area.
I mean, I think that could be a tangible ask. I would definitely want to check in with our, you know, nonprofit agencies who are providing that work to make sure that that's where we could have the most meaningful impact. But I think that that's certainly something that we could consider. I mean, one more thing that I'll point to in the report that I submitted to you all is the specific data point around the phase 3. So I kind of, you know, went into a little narrative about how we provide case management services in Burlington through a phasing system. And phase 3 means that folks are housing ready. So as we're looking at that, that's on just the second page there. We have a total of 110 households in Chittenden County who are ready to move into housing. And what is stopping them is that there is not a housing resource for them. So whether that's a rental subsidy, whether that's a unit. And in that table, we've broken that down by subcategories. So there are 35 chronic folks who are ready for housing and not able to be placed, 24 families, which is pretty significant because that represents just barely under half of our family population in Chittenden County is ready to move into housing, but does not have a unit or a subsidy. We have 4 veterans, and then we also have 10 youth. In addition, there are 37 single individuals who are ready to move into housing. So these are folks who have, you know, gained all of the have all addressed their, you know, addressed any barriers around housing, have identification, have completed housing applications, have been connected to services and resources, and they're waiting for a unit right now. So I think just to give you, you know, a sort of a just that I feel like that's a really meaningful data point is that it's that it's not that people are, and certainly we have a huge number of people who aren't close to housing, you know, at all, and that's true and just as important. But I think that while we, you know, think about that, we also need to look at the number of people who are just waiting for a unit and or a subsidy, which I feel like it seems pretty significant.
I unfortunately need to go right now. I do appreciate all the work you did. And we can all talk about how to present this. One thing that might be helpful with the report, which was really inclusive, is maybe like a short summary page. That is a very meaningful statistic, and there's a couple of other ones that we really want to get out to people so they understand what's going on.
Well, I think all of it's important, Sarah. So I hear you though. It turned out to be a lot. It turned out to be a little longer than where I started, but I felt like it's important to. I mean, I've been in this role for 6 months, and I felt like it was important to, you know, share kind of the full scope of you know how things are going, what we're seeing, and how the city is involved. I think. Yep. But I could do a summary.
Agreed. Well, thank you. I hate to cut out, but I'll catch up after the meeting with kind of where we landed. Thank you.
Great. And thanks, Marcella, for sharing some additional resources. If other folks have things that they want, if other folks have public forum comments before we go, other than that, Sarah, I'll talk to Karen. I think I heard you say that it would still be useful for us to, the things that the city can do is get an update on our camping policy, which of course Joe's taken the lead on, and we've stalled a little bit on, but is still on our plate to do. And then of course, any support that you need with continuing to advocate for this on a state level or coordinate on a state level, let us know. But other than that, just look forward to giving this update to the city council and sharing it with some of the reps. And just, thank you again for just doing the work just to keep us updated, because I know that's time and energy on your part that, you know, again, is soon outdated, and just appreciate the time that took and how cohesive it is.
Thanks. There's not much else I like writing about. So
Great. I'm not seeing any other hands for public forum. And I also don't want to, I'm sorry, I should know this, but we don't have another meeting set yet, but we've roughly said that we've meet at the end of October. Is that what I remember?
Yes, I believe it's the 25th, but I will, so we have something tentatively planned for October 25th at 5 p.m. I believe at the time that back in September that worked for all the committee members, but I think we kept it tentative because you guys are also busy.
Great. And like you said, I do actually have that on my calendar, so it is blocked off. And I think it was more about if we could get a move on the camping policy and seeing where the city attorney's office was at and things like that for the tentativeness. Joe, did you have anything to add, or Christine, before we close?
No, but I will, if the 25th still works for folks, plan to have some sort of comparison ready for us to discuss on the 25th, and can also try to reach out to the mayor's office to see if
We can get
they
that memo.
and we can go from there.
Great, awesome. That should give us enough time to get all that together. Great, thank you, everyone. I know that this was a briefer meeting, but I think that was perfect. Sarah, again, thank you for the presentation. And I'll loop back on timing for the council. Thanks, everyone. Hi, Jess.
Thank you so
No
much.
problem. Bye.
Bye.